So you should see my screen now.
Yep.
And good. Title slide. Woo-wee. So here's a couple of member images, and they're not too shabby. One's the Trifid Nebula, and the other is the Andromeda Galaxy. And so they're not super spectacular, but they're really good. You can see an awful lot of things. And these are both taken with electronically assisted astronomy scopes or smart scopes or roboscopes or however you want to talk to them. And we're doing the presentation tonight because there's been a big evolution in the scopes. They're going from a couple of years ago when there's nothing to now you have a lot of choices. And the choice that you make depends on what you want to do with it. So I've tried to be neutral. After comparing the limited options 8 months ago, I bought a Unistellar Equinox 2. The question that I've been asked is, would I do it again, given what is available now? And I'm thinking maybe, probably not, but it really depends on what I've grown to want to do rather than what I thought I was going to do right in the beginning. The market's evolving very quickly. No matter what you buy, expect other products to come out that may surpass it. And I say may surpass it because it depends on what you want to do. And the new scopes aren't necessarily better than the older scopes. One of the first ones out, Richard did a presentation on this early last year, which caused me to spend money on my scope. But it's still, the Stellina is still a good scope. You can see lots of things with it. It has a fairly high density, pixel density, and there's nothing wrong with it. Other scopes have come out with features. The Stellina is no longer for sale. So it's now a collector's item, Richard. What you get needs to be appropriate for you. To a point, my recommendation is get the most expensive scope that you can afford. Because when you pay more, to a point, you get more. So let's take a look at the evolution. We're going to start off with the company called Veonis. They make the Stellina, and they stopped that, and they went to the Vespera, which Laurel has, then to the Vespera 2. And coming out soon is a really good one called the Vespera Pro. You can see it moves from the original, the Stellina had a 6.4 megapixel capture, and the Vespera went down to about 2, but with software they can bump it up to about 8. The Vespera 2 is 8.3, and the Vespera Pro is going to be 12.5. Now, when we think about megapixels, it's not just as simple as picking the biggest one gives you the best picture. You're really looking at the megapixels per, or the number of pixels per unit of area in the image. That is what will give you the resolution. So if your field of view is narrow and you have a high number of pixels, you're going to be able to differentiate a lot of things. And if you combine that with good light gathering, then you're going to see a lot of stars or have good deep space objects, good DSO capture. Now, the one thing that you should think of if you're considering getting one of these is the weight. The Stellina is the second heaviest one that we're going to talk about tonight. And although it comes with a pack, it's 25 pounds. Then you drop down to the Vespera 2, and the Vespera Pro. They now are at 11 pounds, but they also have an 11-hour battery. Some of the weight on difference as it changed is due to the battery coming in. It's the same size, maintains the same focal length, 250 millimeters. And if you remember my talk a couple months ago, we talked about focal length and apparent magnification of telescopes. Now, one big advantage of the Vespera and the Vespera Pro especially is that it is capable of doing a mosaic. So it'll image, move over, image, move over, image, move over, image. It'll capture a big area. And that's what allows you to have a good magnification and capture a big field of view. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Now we're going to look at the unistellar. And first off, there's two models of the unistellar, the Equinox and EV scope. The only difference between the early versions is that little bump on the side of the EV scope. That's a Nikon lens. There's a little screen inside, and you can look into the scope and see, using that little screen, you can see what the scope is looking at. Well, I decided that wasn't worth the $1,100 extra. And I just bought a good pad to go with it. Now let's transition over to the EQ2 and the EV2. And the same difference between the Equinox 2 and the EV Scope 2 is that little Nikon eyepiece, which Nikon is very proud of. They've just recently brought out another model, and it's called the Odyssey and the Odyssey Pro. We didn't talk about costs here. You can't buy the Equinox or the EV scope anymore from the manufacturer, but you can get them on the secondhand market. I do not recommend either of those. If you get something on the secondhand market, an EQ2 is the best deal, though you can get the EV2 quite cheaply. Well, that's relative, I know, around $1,000. The Odyssey and Odyssey Pro, again, one of the only differences is that little bump on the side, the Nikon lens. They are new. They are listed as a Discover range. So they're held out for the market. It's more of a less expert. Now, a lot of us that have the EQ2 and EV2, we just look at the differences saying, okay, we now have an expert scope because we have to collimate it and focus it, manual focus. The Odyssey and the Odyssey Pro don't have that. Not that it takes long to focus or collimate an EQ2. It's pretty simple. 5 minutes, that's it. And it stays collimated for a long time unless you bump it around. Now, special is their red version. For another $600 US, you can get your telescope in red. That's the only difference.
Oh.
I think it looks sort of cool, and I'd like to have the red one, but I don't want an EV scope to pay extra for the little eyepiece, and it's dark outside. I don't need it to be red. Okay, so this is mine. This is an Equinox 2. It has a 450 millimeter focal length. That's the longest focal length of any smart scope. It has 114 millimeter aperture. That's the second widest of EV scopes. But draw your attention to the field of view. Substantially different than the Varonis products. If we go back to the Varonis products, you will see that the field of view is 2.5 to 1.4 or 1.6 by 1.6 degrees. This is a lot smaller. So it has a lower number of pixels, but we're packing those pixels into a smaller field of view, and it has a wider aperture. And when I was buying, I looked at that, and that moved me to this. Also, the limiting magnitude, well, it's officially 18.2, like that 0.2 matters. Not really, doesn't matter. But most other scopes, the Vespera Pro, it's officially limited to 16, and there's a lot of stars that you pick up by going to 18. And actually, if you go to 17, from 18, you lose half the stars. But functionally, what we've been seeing, and I'm going from a bunch of users, is that we can get to about magnitude 20 before it's just fuzz. Has an 11-hour battery. The EV scope is the same. The EV2 is the same as the Equinox 2. As I said, for an extra $1,000 or so, it gives you a little bump in pixels, and it gives you the Nikon eyepiece. So that's the pathway that each of them have gone to. And this is the new one, and I've seen some really good pictures coming from this version, the Unistellar Odyssey. Depending on your need, not every scope is better. And if you look over here, what is it doing? Okay, it's about the same degree field of view. The megapixels are about half. The magnitude drops to about 17. It's a lot lighter. It's less than half the weight, but you only have a 5-hour battery. And you've dropped down to 320 millimeter focal length and an 85 millimeter aperture. This is an excellent telescope. It doesn't do what I want it to, but it's selling very, very well right now. It's light, it's portable. The Odyssey Pro is about the same. And the cost of the Odyssey is about $24.99 US, 2,499 US. Typically, those go on sale for $500 off twice a year. The Odyssey Pro is up around 4,100 US, and the red version of it is 4,900 US. So I can save the money and not get that even if I was doing that. But this is easier to set up. It's easier to use. It works super well on DSO, deep space objects, and it's better at planets. Now, the one thing that I want to be sure everybody understands is that if you're looking at the moon and planets, the robotic telescopes are not what you want to use. The best images that I've seen come from the Odyssey. I can take decent pictures of the moon and semi-decent pictures of Jupiter. It's difficult to make out the red spot, but you can. and it's just a little bit fuzzy. These scopes are not made for planetary observation. The best way to look at planets is what I talked about a couple of months ago. You get a standard smaller scope and put an extender on, and then you can effectively increase the focal length. Now let's talk about ultra portables. And Richard, if you want to jump in and talk about your new toy, that'd be good. But we're looking at two popular ultra portables. The first is the Dwarf, and you can see the field of view. It's a wide angle, but they also have a built-in telephoto that cuts it down. It's a 24 millimeter aperture. So remember, the smaller the aperture, the less light gets in. It has 8 megapixels on the telephoto aspect and 2 megapixels on the wide view. I find that a little bit confusing, but that's what they say on their website. One interesting thing about it is it does daytime imaging and nature tracking. So it'll see if you focus in on a bird and the bird takes off, it'll follow the bird. It weighs 2.6 pounds. It fits in a little pack that you could wear. It's only this big. Right? And the other one is the Sea Star S50 by Zwo, made in China. And it also has a 3-degree field of view, a 50 millimeter aperture. Its focal length, though, is 250 millimeters, so it has a little bit better magnification. And I think I copied over the built-in telephoto. It does not have a built-in telephoto. I'll have to correct that if we post this on the website. These are under $1,000. These are Canadian prices, $675 essentially, plus tax for the Sea Star. And Zwo is a camera company, so they know what they're doing. There are advantages for both. I like the telephoto for the Dwarf and the daytime tracking. I have been recommending that people, if they're looking for a little scope for somebody to start out, a kid, for instance, the Sea Star makes an excellent little scope, and the app works super well. The only downside of the Dwarf that I've been reading about is sometimes the app is a little clunky. Now, on the horizon is a Celestron Origin. It's due out in the spring, and it's about $4,000 US. But the advantage is it's the widest scope. It's a 6-inch tube. It's a little bit heavier. It is now the heaviest at 41 pounds for the scope, the mount, and the tripod. It has 6.4 megapixels and a 1.7 by 0.85 degree field of view. So the Equinox 2 has a higher density of pixels, but Celestron is a very established company. It produces quality products, and one of the things that we worry about with Unistellar and Dwarf and Vaonis is they're relatively new companies. They don't have a lot of history. So this is a scope that's getting a lot more attention, especially from those people who have Celestron scopes and apparently have money. The battery is 6 hours, so better than 5, worse than 11. I've never spent 11 hours outside doing astronomy anyway. So that's all well and good. Okay, so that's the end of the little spiel. And I will save. I'll come back. I will stop sharing. There. Are there any questions on them?
Hey, Bill, I noticed that last one, the origin one. So that's quite smart. So that's run because the mount is identical to my evolution mount, and the scope is identical to the 6-inch SCT we already do. So it looks like we put the money in developing the electronics package that's on the back end of the scope, which is what does the processing, the control, and everything. So it looks to me like we haven't had to develop a new mount. The tripod's the same. The scope is pretty well the same as a 6 SCT. So it looks like I'm thinking quite a smart move. And obviously people who have conventional scopes are familiar with the way that looks. It looks like the conventional scope, except for when you get close to it.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other advantages of the Celestron product is that it takes the standard 1 1/4 and 2-inch filters readily. It's hard to get a diverse selection of filters for the other ones. In fact, you avoid the warranty on the Unistellar products by putting a filter in if they see that there's a fingerprint on the sensor. They're not going to cover it. So you got to be very careful, but it's adaptable for filters as well. Any questions on them? Which one should you get? Which one do you want?
What was the one that's just below? Sorry, the one that's just beyond your price range. That's the one you need to get. That's the one you want to get. The one just beyond your price range.
Yes, that's beyond the budget. Well, I got my Equinox 2 for about $17.50 US back 8 months ago. You can get them with a backpack for about $800 now, $900 on the used market. They still sell them at $24.99 new, or sometimes, if you're lucky, you can get them at the $17.50 price that I got it. They sell it a couple times a year, and I like my scope. It's great. It takes 3 minutes to set up.
I was impressed when I saw you running your scope at Davis Bay at the Astro Cafe. You were sitting in the back of your truck, and you had your laptop. I kind of looked like mission control. So I'm looking at my scope, and I come over and look at your laptop, and there's like images of nebula and stuff appearing on there. And because your screen was fairly big, it looked quite impressive actually.
Yeah, and then I put the laptop, my pad on top of the back of the truck and drove away without
Oh,
taking it in. So I have a new pad.
Oops.
Yep. Stuff happens. Okay.
You said something about a sweet spot. What did you mean
Yes.
by that?
A sweet spot is function versus cost.
Mhm.
And so to me, and it's all up to you, up to your use, but to me, the Equinox 2 is the sweet spot right now for cost versus functionality. But if I had to buy one right now, I'm thinking I might actually go and purchase a Vespera Pro.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's lighter. I don't lose that much in stars, and it does mosaic, and that's only because I have a camera and a scope and a couple other scopes, and I can do intense. If I'm just jumping out to set something up, it'd be nice to be able to travel with it.
hey, can I mention, I've seen people on forums online saying And this started when even Stellina came out and said, hey, look at this other giant scope, conventional one you could buy for the same money, so that's a ripoff. And I see that persistent now, but what the whole bit they're forgetting is if somebody went and bought the other equipment, separately, camera, telescope, mount, to do astrophotography, but they don't know how to do astrophotography. That's what they're selling here, is the expertise is built into the thing. You can buy that for a 10-year-old kid and you can go do astrophotography. Like, that's the main thing they're selling, is the expertise. The scope knows how to do it. Like, if you went and bought the equipment, you wouldn't know how to do astrophotography. It's a learning curve, right?
Yes, and I have someplace here. I can't grab it at hand right now, but I was just thinking I didn't talk about the solar filter. All of these scopes have solar filters, and they're producing reasonably good quality white light images of the sun.
I was just going to say that is the there is the dwarf, and that is the carrying case.
Yeah, wow.
There's a pop soda can beside it, so you can see how small it is. And I got it, and the only reason I got it was because I already had the Selena, so I didn't want to kind of reproduce that, which does do mosaic, by the way. And also the other thing with Selena is I have just I got a battery that doubles the life, which fits into the compartment, the battery compartment. But it only weighs 2 pounds, or is it 2.5 pounds? And it has these glasses that go on the front, which take standard 1.25 inch filter, so you can put any filter you like actually on the dwarf. But I haven't yet done any astrophotography with it. I've just been playing with it in daylight, and actually it's quite neat. It takes some quite good long range telephoto shots. But as I say, I mean, that from my perspective, that was just the deciding factor. I just wanted something I could take with me on an airplane without, so I could get some shots of the southern hemisphere without having something really bulky to carry. I didn't want to sort of turn up with a whole lot of equipment. So I just wanted something I just sort of take on the airplane as hand luggage, and that it seems to kind of do that. But I have no idea yet. I'll have to give a report when I've actually taken some photographs of it.
What does Stellina think about this, Richard?
Sorry?
What does Stellina think about this?
What does Stellina think?
New robots arrived.
Well, I don't know how to put them alongside each other, but I mean, there's Stellina. That's the problem. I mean, the main problem with Stellina, as I see it, is that it's 25 pounds. So I mean, there was no way I was going to take that down to Australia, and it's also quite bulky. But it's, I've been very pleased with the results of Stellina, and I realized when I bought it. I mean, obviously, if you jump in, especially if you jump in early, I mean, obviously, technology is going to improve. But I mean, I took a couple of pictures of the Rosette Nebula and the Orion Nebula the other night at the observatory, which I was quite pleased with. But that was Stellina. And I was going to do, I actually started doing a mosaic, but the only problem with the mosaic is it takes time, and it was really cold. It was actually freezing on the observatory handrail, so we sort of packed it in. So I've never actually done a mosaic yet, but one day I have to do that. But this one is a 3-degree field of view, and I was hoping, just to something like the Eta Carina Nebula, the Large Magellanic Cloud, and those sort of things that you see in the southern hemisphere. I was hoping to be able to get when I'm down there, which I think with this I should be able to do. And it's really, as I say, here's a can of pop. You can see, I mean, it's pretty small.
Right. Wow.
When I saw it come out on Kickstarter. I believe that it was on Kickstarter a while back, and I looked at it and I thought, how can something so small take something, take good pictures? So I didn't bother to get it at $250 or whatever it was. I couldn't. It's just. But I've seen pictures taken from the Dwarf 2 on online, and they're pretty good.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's been what I've seen. As I say, I haven't actually had any direct experience with it myself yet. But I wasn't looking for superb quality. I just thought it'd be a bit of fun to be able to get down to the southern hemisphere and take some objects that we don't see up here.
Mm-hmm. And
Um,
for $600 or so,
yeah,
it's a deal.
yeah, I got the. I think it was $7.95 because I got the what they call the deluxe version. But
Oh, the deluxe pack. Yeah.
it just came with the glasses and the lens. The lenses, there's two neutral density filters for solar, and then there's another. I'm not quite sure actually. I think that's a light pollution filter, and then I got another battery. So, yeah, I just as I say, that was really why. I mean, if I'm not sure I would have bought it if I didn't already have Stellina, and I don't want to get another telescope that's sort of similar but better than Stellina. I'm just quite happy to play with what I've got.
Yeah, Stellina is not bad. None of them are bad.
No,
It's what do you
I mean,
want to do with them?
yeah, I mean, it's not, if you, I mean, I've got the ZWO camera, which, could go on the observatory scope for some sort of serious photography. But that's a long process. It's not something you just sort of pop up and take a few photos and come home.
Yep.